what is going on, guys? Hope you're having a fantastic Sunday. Welcome to Sunday Night Live. Tonight, we've got an incredible night for you. We've got a special guest, Hobie Secrest from Monoprice and Monolith. Hobie, welcome. Jonathan, as always, welcome you, sir.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate you having me on.
Yeah, man, it's been a long time. It's probably been over, oh goodness, it's been at least a year, maybe even 2 years since I've had you on. So I'm really pumped about this. I reached out on my community and asked, like, hey guys, what do you want to know about Monoprice and Monolith? And so we've got some questions that we'll be asking you directly. But if you're here in the chat tonight and you've got some questions for Hobie, definitely drop them. I don't have Ryan on tonight to star them. So I'm going to do my best to multitask, but I know I stink at it. So if I miss your question, and it doesn't get addressed, definitely just add it again. I won't hold it against you. So, but I've got a bunch of them, even kind of pre-inputted, because those of you that added your questions, let's say yesterday when I posted the video, the notification, those kind of get hidden. So anyway, so we're excited that you're here, man. I'm just going to say hi to some folks in the chat. Good to see Tim and Chazin. Andrew, what's up, brother? Uh, Siphonics Audio, good to see you. Michael, Roland, lots of folks. Tristan, Chris, we got SRW 1000, Tracy. Man, lots of you guys. Appreciate y'all taking the time to hang out with us tonight. We're going to have a lot of fun. We're going to talk about really one of the great budget, but huge performance from Monoprice. And so I'm excited about that. I've reviewed a lot of your stuff, Hobie, over the years, and I am really, really excited about that. And so before we kind of get started, oh, wow, my camera's wanting to focus.
Yeah, you
Fine.
were.
Yeah, I think if I move, man, I'm still figuring out this new setup. It's kind of temporary. So I've worked on lighting just a little bit, and this office is kind of getting rearranged. And so I'm going to enclose the wall. So you'll see some changes in the coming weeks for this setup. But hope we kind of explain just kind of your role. How do you fit into the Monolith, Monoprice, and what does that all look like? And just tell us a little bit about you for those of you in the chat that don't know and aren't familiar with Monoprice.
Yeah, so I came on board Monoprice in 2015, and I started managing the audio side of Monoprice, I think roughly 2017 or 2018. And I always had this idea, even when I came on board, and because I've been a home theater enthusiast for most of my life, even from when I was a little kid. I've always loved movies. I'm a failed filmmaker. Went to film school. My wife will love that. She loves when I tell people that. Uh, um, but even before I went to Monoprice, like when I was getting onboarded, I have always seen guys like Outlaw, Tiva doing a direct to consumer model, and I thought Monoprice was primed to be able to do that in the high end audio home theater space, just like they did. So I pitched it internally and was told I was crazy in some ways. In fact, one of the executives there at the time, who's no longer there, said, like, I don't understand why anybody would buy a $2,000 subwoofer or a $1,500 high-end amplifier. And this was a gentleman that rides a $3,000 bicycle. And that's what I explained to him is I don't understand why anybody would buy a $3,000 bicycle. Again, here we are. So we started with the first SKU, which was a 7-channel 200-watt amplifier. And it sold really well. Obviously, a lot of bang for the buck, a lot of value. Partnered with, ATI, who's an OEM partner of several other brands. So I knew the quality would be good. Took away a lot of guesswork from that. And it just went from there. I whiteboarded assortment, of everything I would want and things that I would buy, and excluded things that I wouldn't buy. That I think I see some brands put out in the market where I'm kind of like, not for me. But the goal is always to be over exceed value for and performance, right? Or over exceed performance and with incredible value. And I think we've really done that on subwoofers, some of the newer speakers that have come out, obviously the amplifiers, the processor we put out a couple of years ago, and I just hope to continue it on. But I'm the only guy doing this. Internally, it's just me. There isn't anybody making any other decisions on what the assortment should look like, what it should be priced, what should come out. It's just me. I try to partner with factories and engineers that I know will do good work. And, I determine the parameters of how the product should perform, what I'm trying to get out of it. There's, several conversations before any work gets done. I don't know if anybody's familiar with doing this. Like with a subwoofer, it's a little straightforward for me, as I'm going, like I use a subwoofer to do this, and I'll just take CEA measurements of what I think is like an SVS sub or a power sound or rhythmic, and I'm like, we got to beat these MFers. You know what I mean? This is the goal. Like so. Whereas it's funny, but like buying a sub strictly on that isn't always the best idea. There's other reasons to buy a sub just on pure raw output. Especially when I'll see a forum discussion kind of get caught up in a half dB and whether or not that matters or not. It's inaudible. It just looks great on a spec sheet. But it was very easy to do. So I did, and I worked with guys like Dan Romer, Robert Wills, like Boris Kessler, Jeff Hips, and some other folks in Alex Cavalli in the headphone space to make sure the products are good, the products performed, and that we can hit a price point that made sense, and to where it'd be something where I thought, I would be able to afford it and buy it. And I'm just like an average guy. So to me, the key is just work with people smarter than me, and things have worked out pretty well.
Fantastic. Well, that's one thing that's great about you is and I kind of feel the same way. That's why I have people like Jonathan and Ryan on the show, because they're way smarter. They've had more experience. When you surround yourself with people that excel in what they do, then it's not you that's having to make sure that everything happens. And so you've surrounded yourself with people that are well-known in the industry, Dan Romer, the folks at ATI. And so that was super, super smart, I think, in trying to make a product or make multiple products actually that are performance-based. But like you said, for the average guy, we can definitely save up and afford this. It doesn't have to be a second mortgage on your home, so to speak.
Right.
So, well, super, super cool. We got a bunch of questions. We're just going to jump right into it. I see Techno Dad's in the house. Thanks for stopping by, Chana. Good to see you. Ike's in the house. Lots more folks. So we're going to have a fun conversation. Like I said, if you've got a question, drop it in the chat. We'll do our best to try to get to those. I'm going to go to some of the questions that were asked before, like StreamYard doesn't keep old comments that were posted yesterday. So let me just put those up, and then I'll hop over to the actual chat. So the first ones a lot of people have been asking is in regards to the HTP1. So I'm going to throw a couple of comments up here. Michael McAllister, we need HTP1 info. Why were we abandoned? We've got John that says, hey, please ask Hobie what happened to the HTP1. And M. Moon, he says, please ask Hobie about the HTP1 availability. And so there are probably going to be some other questions in regards to HTP1, but can you kind of address some of those?
Yeah, so HTP1 availability is really hit by a lot of component shortages in the product. Some simple things like IC chips. Obviously, the AKM factory burning down was a big factor. Whereas the DAC, we're using a 4493 DAC, and the AKM factory burned down. They weren't able to manufacture any more DACs. They do have a new drop-in replacement that's available now that I think we could use. We were able to procure some DACs. Plus, just sort of there was a lot of behind the scenes, I would say, strife on the product. It was extremely challenging for us to support. The abandoned part, I think I could address the easiest this way, and it's a little on the personal side, but I was actually diagnosed with cancer a couple of years, a little over 18 months ago, and I sort of had to back away for from being on the forums as much. It was kind of all consuming the first 6 months out of the gate for me. But I'm much better in a mental space now, where it doesn't sort of consume my life. I am going through treatment. I'll probably be on treatment the rest of my life, but it's going well.
Yeah.
I'm still here. It's not like I'm about to fall dead next week. I'll probably fall dead from diabetic attack more than cancer. The rate I'm going, and the amount of donuts I like to consume. Yeah, that's kind of the reason I really took a step back from the forum side, other than a couple posts here and there. I do think I'll start to ramp that back up. The HTTP one is currently being built right now. We should have stock. I've said this before and been wrong, but the parts are actually all here this time. So it should be sometime in January. We think we've addressed the boot loop issue. We think I'm pretty confident we'll end up having DTSX Pro functioning by the time it comes back into stock. We actually have it running it runs on the system already. It's just the GUI we need to adjust. It doesn't. The HTTP one currently doesn't know it has the extra speakers, even though it can decode them, which I don't know that makes sense. But it's so it's coming, and trust me, not having that thing in stock, if anybody sells things for a living, that was a big black hole to try to comp from a year over year perspective. So I always wished I had it back in stock.
Yeah. Well, man, that is crazy. I know off camera you shared that with me, and that was something that I wanted. If you wanted to share that, that was totally up to you. And so that's a crazy blow, man.
I can't imagine. It's not. Well, I think it's just better to be transparent, other than I'm not very mysterious. I think everybody that knows me, I don't ever have a problem sharing.
Yeah.
Or being straightforward, sometimes to a fault. But I just felt like it's just easier to be honest. But no, I appreciate it.
Yeah, dude. We're glad you're here, man, and I appreciate it. I mean, you could be doing a million different things, and you took time to answer these guys' questions. So, like I said, we're going to continue to go through these. So if you got questions, just drop those in the chat. We've got a couple others here, and then I'll switch back over to the chat. So some of them, like I said, were in regards to the HTTP 1. We got that one. What about the future of the HTTP 1? And is it even supported? Is the HTTP 1 still supported now, which I'm assuming it is?
Yeah, it's still supported.
Can you share any and again, I know that there's certain things that you can share here on the channel and certain ones that you're going to have to say, we'll just have to wait and see. And so I'm not going to make you say anything, but whatever you're willing to share, we'd love to know.
So there currently isn't really an HTTP, quote unquote, HTTP 2 like in development, right? But eventually we will upgrade the HTTP 1 to HDMI 2.1. There are some things coming out from some other licensees that they haven't announced yet that I'm already aware that the HTTP 1 should have no problem supporting. So like in some ways there may never be an HTTP 2, but there'll just be continuous upgrades to the HTTP 1, right? I mean, because the only thing I really think it's missing would be, obviously HDMI 2.1, right? And we're working on that. It's been way more challenging, I think, any of us ever anticipated on getting HDMI 2.1 boards that were cost effective for the processor, not having us to jack up basically I don't want to jack up the processor $1,000 to include 2.1 because I'm an enthusiast too, and as much as I would want it on there, there's only two components in the world right now that you need 2.1 really. There's the PS5 or an Xbox Series X, and I just use like HDMI eARC on those, so I hook those up directly to my display to take care of the variable refresh rate or 120 hertz and all that, and then just feed the sound into the processor or receiver, and that's how I get around that. It'd be ideal to have 2.1 in the processor. Don't get me wrong, but I think, but after it has 2.1 and if it supports all the current codecs, it's sort of like what else? I mean, what would really for me, I mean, it's a thing like what other feature set would make it be an HTP 2,
Right.
because like if you look at the market as it is now, on like, from, I'm not, this isn't disparaging anything, but from Yamaha and Onkyo, when they do their, an annual refresh of the product, it's pretty much the same product,
Right.
right? For the most part. Now there's been some, bigger jumps on the feature set depending on the year, but some years it's like it's the exact same. Actually, I mean, sometimes it's the exact same thing.
Right.
Right. Year to year. So that's not going to be how this gets handled, right?
Mhm.
Well, there won't be a new processor every 2 years, sort of just because. I think it'll be more running changes and firmware upgrades.
Gotcha. All right. So you've heard some updates on the HTP one. So pretty much the same. Hopefully we're going to continue to add some features. So if there are features that you guys in the chat would love to see in the HTP one, today's the day, man. Let Hobie know in the chat.
Yeah, send them over.
Yeah, at least let him know, like, hey, these are some things that consumers, people that love Monoprice, love Monolith, are looking for. So definitely drop those in the chat. So let's talk a little bit about subwoofers. I know this came up as well. Any plans on a 16 or maybe an 18-inch sealed sub? And then I think there were a couple others similar. Any plans to make bigger subs like an 18 or maybe even a dual 16?
So I will say a dual 16 is intriguing and something that wouldn't really be all that difficult for us to do. But so doing the 16, so we did, let me back up real quick. So we did do some sealed only subwoofers in the past, and for the 10, 12, and 15. The reality is they didn't sell very well for us, and I discontinued them based on sale. I mean, it was not even close compared to ported.
Okay.
And I think, so that told me a couple of things. At least this is what I took from that. And I might be completely wrong, right? Because we actually had a lot of requests for sealed subwoofers too. That's the reason I did them. I was like, yes. And I mean, they were already in the works anyway, because it makes perfect sense to have ported and sealed subs, right? But kind of what it told me when the sealed didn't do that well, my takeaway was that, one, you can stuff the ports in our subs and make them sealed if you really want a sealed experience and performance. Two, the sealed subs were a little bit smaller than the ported subs, right?
Right.
They see a dog on the television.
Oh, you're good.
Yeah. Okay. I'm just like, what
Jonathan's got some cool dogs too.
I'm gonna get robbed. Is there a burglar? Oh no, it's a commercial for canine food. Anyway,
Funny.
So the sealed subs were smaller, right? As sealed subs are, but that to me it meant like our customers didn't care. Like, so size isn't an issue with the customer buying a Monolith sub. Isn't concerned about how big it is or how small it is, right? They don't care. They just want performance.
Correct.
So I don't think there's going to be a 16-inch sealed. If you want sealed performance, you could stuff the ports and get a sealed 16 from that. I'm not currently working on an 18, a little bit based on how the 16 is doing, and it's doing great. But like, so the 16 is, everything's like a subset of others, and this is sort of how I think about things. So the 18 is only going to do a certain percentage of what the 16 sells. I'm not sure that's worth the real estate in the warehouse, because these things are,
monsters.
Are monsters.
Sure.
As much as there is a part of me that wants an 18 just to go up with, like go head to head with some of the guys with 18s out there. There is a competitive nature to this too. Sure. It's like, I like to sort of go to town on that. But there's nothing in development right now.
Okay.
I think we have a really robust range of subs and even duals with, dual 10, dual 12, dual 15. Like I said, maybe a dual 16, because it wouldn't actually be all that complicated. And it's what's strange is the best selling duals is the dual 15.
Yeah. I reviewed.
And then the next one's the dual 10. So like the dual 12 kind of got squeezed out.
Okay.
I think it's just a tweener. It's like you either,
if you want big, you either got the room or don't. And
right.
It's kind of like,
And you're kind of better. I mean, to me, because I'll get the question, should I get a dual 15 or two 15s? It's like, well, if your room could support two 15s, I would get two 15s because you could space them out.
Right.
Put them in different spots in your room. Sure. But again, I said, but if you're stuck with like, it's got to go here or this corner and that's it, then get a dual, That's the problem with subwoofer. I mean, I'm sure, we all get questions on subwoofers. There's so many variables. When somebody goes, should I get a 10 or a 12 for my room? It's like, how big's your room? Where, what's your flexibility and placement? I mean, there's just so much, there's a lot of different things that need to be asked. It's just not black or white.
Yeah.
Like a lot of people get a sub because I get customer feedback all the time, and it's like, you're sitting in a null, dude. I mean, that's why, it's like, you bought a 16 from us, and you're saying there isn't any bass output. Yeah. You're sitting in the null in your room, because trust me, those have plenty of output. So, yeah. I mean, the reality is any subwoofer you buy from, I probably, this is where like I'm nice. Like you buy a Monolith sub, an SVS sub, a Power Sound sub, Sue sub or Rhythmic sub, you've got a great subwoofer, right? If it's not performing in your room, it's probably something in the setup, more so than the subwoofer. You know what I mean?
We talked about that last call, where most of those manufacturers are, with the same size driver, no matter what, are going to be within about 3 dB of each other if they're the same alignment, like ported versus ported. And so you're sometimes you get these big quabbles, these big kind of loyalist camps on the forums, and it's almost funny because it's exactly you pointed out very well. You're sitting in a null, you don't have your stuff set up right, you didn't have a calibrated mic to look at it over. It's stuff like that gets people. Have you considered, Hobie, like dual opposed subwoofers?
Right.
Those Seat and Sound used to have a submersive, and that was such a popular sub for a while. And I don't think I don't think Seat and Sound is doing the volume that it used to do, and I don't know that anyone else has filled that market. Another group, Epic Empire, if you remember those subs.
Oh, I remember Epic.
Yeah, the same sort of style.
Yeah.
Those they went under. I think the owner had some trouble, but
the only one I know of, like Power Sound Audio, still has some dual opposing. They're like big boys. Like I reviewed their S3612, I think. So that was like a dual 18 dual opposing. So like you said, there's really not a lot of people that are making those. I wonder how popular that would be.
So so I've had I've had previous conversations. So, I don't think it's anything like Dan Romer designed all the subwoofers for Monolith. And I mean, the Monolith product built in the same factory as the Perlisten product.
Yeah.
I'm just going to get that out there. He'll love me.
That's why they sound so good.
Yeah, I'll probably get an email off of that comment. But the truth's out there, Dan. No, I'm just kidding. What did I try to say? I don't like, so putting out a subwoofer just because it's dual opposed, I think sort of offers some challenges. I think they're, I'm working more on a micro subwoofer right now, how we get there to a smaller form factor to have the performance that I think will be okay. Maybe that ends up being a dual opposed, right? But we're still working through that. They're not with Dan, but with Dan's now too busy to work with me, which is fair, totally fair. He launched a very amazing speaker. Good for you, Dan. Yay, great.
I'll be like, dang it.
So no longer returns my calls. I do get gift baskets at Christmas from him still, but anyway,
awesome. He still loves you.
No, he's an awesome dude, and Perlisten are awesome speakers. But I mean, I don't know. It's not going to come out next year, I don't think, but it's something in the hopper that I think makes a lot of sense. I mean, because subwoofers, especially the Monolith subwoofers, are huge.
Yeah.
If I can get a smaller sub that performs, we'll try a couple sizes and see what happens.
Sure. So really, it just kind of comes down to, is the market asking for it, and then of course, sometimes people ask for stuff that they're not really wanting to buy. They just want to see it made. I mean, let's be fair. I mean, there are a lot of
Right.
people. It's like, oh man, we'd love to see dual 18s. Are you going to buy them? Well, no.
Right.
Well, that doesn't help you out. We
Right.
need input from people that are like, hey, we need this in our life. And somebody out there is not filling that void. Maybe it's, yes, there's dual 18s out there or single 18s, but they're expensive. Or maybe I got to build them like Jonathan. I don't have the talent or the ability to do that. So could you make one for us that's affordable? Then I could see, okay, that makes sense. And that would be something that maybe, you'd want to pursue, but we've got to have that market and people willing to buy it for it to be really worth the investment on your end to be able to do that. So great questions, man. Keep those coming. And like I said, we'll get to them as many as we can. I'm going to hit a couple super chats here. So let me flip back over here.
Hobie, along the line of the subwoofers real quick before we move off subwoofers,
Yeah.
someone's posted in the comments, what about white, like for a different color option?
Yeah, color. Yeah.
I'll come right back to you, Jim.
It does make it like, so it's not, so I did piano black, right? And again, those have really sold a very small percentage of what just the standard finish has sold. So, I mean, white makes a lot of sense. I mean, same with the speaker, the Encore audio, like white makes a lot of sense, but black is where 90% of your sales will be.
Oh, wow.
Sure.
And it makes it, in a company, I mean, this is any company, not just Monoprice, but Monoprice, we're cautious of what, how much inventory we have on hand, turns and all that type of thing. And so it's keeping a close eye on that. And I've experimented with white in some products, not so much in Monolith, because Monolith, I really wanted sort of this all black, very monolithic feel to it. I try to have a vibe to the assortment, and it's just aesthetics or lack thereof sometimes. Because that's kind of part of the thing is not making sure it's performance sometimes over aesthetics, because some of the aesthetics and speakers and things can get, very expensive, more expensive than they're worth, just about how it's looked. But yeah, I mean, I have kicked around, other finishes internally, white being a big one. We get requests for, maple as well from some customers that I'm sure matches some decor there too, especially have a lot of IKEA furniture.
Right.
But black is safe and consistent, which is a kind of unfortunate, because I like to get a little more fun sometimes too. Like Funk Audio has incredible finishes. But you're paying a lot more to get that kind of finish.
That's true.
But I'm looking at we are currently looking at ways to offer multiple finishes that are more cost effective than how we do it right now. Because right now it's not cost effective for us and it's a weakness that I'm trying to address. So
could you just partner with a cabinet shop and say, this is an external charge, we partner with them, we recommend these people, and you're going to pay the full amount that it's going to cost, type thing. The customer chooses then at that point, and you don't have to carry the inventory, you don't have to deal with the back end of that.
There'd be that sounds great. There'd need to be some like customized. There needs to be some sophistication on like the Monoprice ordering system to be able to do that. But I mean, that does sound like that would make the most sense.
Just another thing to add on your plate, though, right?
yeah. Well, and some of that is, I mean, some of that's just website stuff. That gets that takes a lot of time, and then you have a whole other set of people looking at. ROI on projects like that.
Sure. Gotcha, man. Well, let's go back to the super chat here. So this was from back over here. Jim, appreciate the $10 super chat. Can I get as much impactful bass, which is basically feel it in my chest, with a 13-inch sub as the 15-inch sub? My room size is 14 by 18 with 9-foot ceilings. Looking to replace dual SVS PB2000 Pros with the best product for the room size. Can you speak to that?
I mean, I think the 13's a little punchier than the 15, just from the smaller woofer. They're both extremely capable. I get in fact, from a measurement perspective, they're relatively close. I think even the size of the subwoofers basically are roughly the same. I have been asked like, why is the 15 still there if you have the 13 that performs the same? Anyway, it's because the 15 keeps selling.
Hey,
They're both so it's hard. I kind of like the 13 just because it's a little punchier from a smaller driver.
okay.
But it's totally subjective, and maybe in another room on a different day, like it's not, you know what I mean? Some of this stuff is like just all depends on the conditions you heard it in, or we measured it in, or things like that.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the thing with measurements too. I'm sure like Jonathan sees this too. Like measurements can vary drastically depending on the day, the temperature, who's measuring it, the microphone.
A lot of variables.
Even things that when we do our own CEA measurements, that we can see plus or minus 2 dB swings sometimes on different days. It just really all depends.
So are you thinking he needs to go with a 13 or 15? What would your recommendation?
Well, I would always say the
if
15,
you got the space, get the bigger.
Yeah. I mean, I would go dual 13. I think he'd be happy.
Okay. Oh yeah, dual 13s. So you heard it from Hobie himself. Yeah, appreciate the super chat, man. We got another one down here from Chris.
Who gets the $10, by the way?
That goes to like, man,
do I get $10 for that? I mean, do I get like 2?
I'll send you a Starbucks.
Can we need to start adding a little thing at the bottom, like the tip thing that comes up everywhere we go now? Like,
I love it.
You can get like a little kickback.
I see it everywhere.
At least get like a 4K disc after this is over.
4K, $10 ain't gonna get you far 4K unless you're on Black Friday. Chris,
I bought so many 4Ks on Black Friday.
Oh yeah, that's the best time to buy them.
Yeah, Chris, I mean, we're trained. I just kind of wait because they're going to be $10. Yeah. Like the ones I have to have, like when they come out, I'll still get those. Which according to my wife is like, you seem to have an awful lot. But yeah, I bought. I think I bought a stack of like 8 yesterday. But I'm lucky. I'm in I'm in Southern California, so there's a lot of like used disc shops, at least around me, that have a lot of used. Like I picked up, Woman King, which just came out, and it was $10 used, although it wasn't really used. I mean, I love buying discs anyway.
Yep. Chris, appreciate the $10 super chat. He says, Hobie, what test content do you utilize designing products? So your subs, your processors, headphones, earbuds. What's a benchmark demo that you feel is a must with these products? P.S. My girlfriend and I love the BT headphones, or I guess.
Oh, the earbuds. Yeah, cool. I'm glad. Thank you. Thanks for the question. I'm glad you like the Monolith earbuds. I like those too. I'm currently working on a replacement for those.
You heard it here first.
So for movies, I definitely have a stack of discs. War of the World is always in the stack doing testing bass. It's Phantom Menace. Always putting on the lightsaber duel. Although I still think sometimes the laser disc from way back sounded better, had like more bass to it. I don't know. I can't remember if that's true or not. I'm sure somebody measured it. I don't use any of the new current like Disney Atmos tracks because they seem to be lacking bass. So I don't, like none of the Marvel movies really. But for music, I kind of go like, even though they're not my taste, like it's like Dua Lipa or something like Bruno Mars for something current, but then a lot of 70s stuff like Fleetwood Mac, things that are well recorded. Steely Dan.
Right.
The Eagles with Hotel California. Although I must admit, if I hear Hotel California, I'll die. I've been in this. Now, I don't want to say profession. I use that term loosely, but I've been, doing this since the mid '90s, and it's like when the DTS came out with the Hotel California disc, it was like everywhere. So that song, although it just sounds amazing, but Hotel California is one for Fleetwood Mac. I really like. Kind of hearing for Imaging, same with Pink Floyd, all sorts of stuff. I just start going track by track. I don't have like War of the Worlds for subs. Like
Mhm.
that seems to be the track. Dunkirk is another one
Yeah.
that really seems to trust your sub. Every Day is Kill. Well, that's not what the name. That was the name of it when it came out on video. The Tom Cruise,
Live,
Emily
die,
Blunt movie.
repeat.
Yeah, Live, Die, Repeat. Now,
Yeah.
yeah,
Or
every
I guess
tomorrow.
there was two
Edge of
names.
Tomorrow was the
Edge of
original name.
Tomorrow was the original. Then it's now
Yeah.
Live, Die, Repeat. Or
Yeah.
I think one of the titles was Every Day is Kill in production. I can't remember.
Okay.
I saw
Yeah,
a
I
test
don't think I
screen
hadn't
of
heard
that
that one.
way back. Mad Max Fury Road. I don't know. It's like I love any kind of movie, but when
Mm.
it comes to subs or soundtracks, like all the Star Wars movies are all mixed really well, especially if you're looking for Atmos and things like that. So Force
Yeah.
Awakens, Phantom Menace, which I still kind of think Phantom Menace is the best sounding Star Wars movie.
Okay.
I don't know why. It could be. It just seems to be the best mixed of the Star
Mhm.
Wars.
Right.
But that's kind of what I listen to.
Very cool, man. All right, lots more questions here. I'm gonna look at. So this one we hit on it earlier, but what about maybe the DTS Pro update? Is there one coming, or is it here? Is that
Yeah,
out
so
of the way? What's going on with that?
that's what we're working at. So I'm pretty much kind of, and so internally, I've sort of put a drop dead that DTS Pro has to function before we put it back out.
Hmm.
So the processor probably could have been out earlier,
Okay.
but that's the main thing we're working on now. HDMI 2.1, like I said, so DTSX Pro actually already works on the processing chip that's in there. Like
Okay.
it functions fine. It's just that the GUI doesn't know there are extra speakers since DTSX is locked to 11.1. So it doesn't, when Pro works, it doesn't realize like, oh, I can call these other speakers. That's really the only change we have to make, and then change the GUI so that the user interface so it recognizes that. It's not that difficult, and it's just we just need to work on it. We need to get around to working on it. HDMI 2.1. Some of the boards we have looked at have either been too expensive to where we have to raise the price of the HDP one.
Right.
I kind of want to keep it at the price it is at.
Mm-hmm.
Another issue we've run into on 2.1 boards is power draw, because it consumes a lot more power than the HDMI 2.0 boards. So that may entail changing out the power supply.
Okay.
So maybe when we upgrade 2.1, we'll upgrade the power supply at the same time. We're still trying to see if we can not do that, or if that is a must. But those are some of the things we're looking at. And like I said, from not that I'm trying to sell it, but there's only a couple components that need 2.1, and that's just I mean, I guess a PC would be a third one, but it's just the PS5, which I have, and an Xbox Series X, which I have too.
Yeah.
And I just hook those directly up to the display and do eARC out to utilize the 2.1 features, because I think it's internally I'll see like the cable product manager is always talking about 8K and 8K, why you need a 2.1 cable, and it's like 8K is not real. I don't think I don't think 8K is ever. I mean, you don't need 8K. You don't need 4K. I mean, I don't hope my wife doesn't listen.
Famous last words right
I
here.
don't know, Hobie. All right. So,
Strike that from the record. I did not say that. I never said that.
I'm about to say 1080p on my 150-inch screen doesn't look that exciting. From
I was going to say at a certain size.
Yeah.
So like, if you could only put a 55-inch display, like 4K is kind of even at that point worthless, right? But 8K, like you're gonna need like a 150-inch screen for 8K. Even then, like we're not even watching 8K.
I'm not sure I would notice the difference between 8K and 4K on my size screen at my distance.
Right.
So maybe I would, but who knows?
I mean, there's a theater by I love this theater, the Harkins Theater by us. They have a Cine One screen, which is an 82-foot CinemaScope screen. And it's a 2K projector. I mean, it looks fine. You're not even watching 8K in the cinemas.
Yeah.
So the fact that the thought that we need 8K on even an 85-inch display, I think is what's I mean, plus there's no content. I mean, it's just a whole bunch of other things.
But I think we're a long ways away from 8K. That is for sure.
So I mean, I have friends that work in Hollywood. There's there isn't really a production pipeline. I mean, for 8K, much less there's really hardly a production pipeline for 4K.
No.
Especially if there's a lot of effects, everything is a 2K for the most part.
So this isn't really a question, but Tristan says Hobie is the man behind all the Monolith goodness. Truly remarkable story of how Monoprice went from a cable company to a high-end AV company. It's amazing. And that's really how I found out, through the forums. When I was building my theater room 15 years ago, I was asking the question, like, where can I get some affordable cables? I'm not spending $100 per cable, and Monoprice was who everybody was recommending. And so that's how I found your company, and began ordering all my cables and speaker wire and interconnects. And then one day I pop on your website and you're making computer monitor stands and this and that. I'm like, when did they start doing this? And then it just started snowballing. And then when you came out with the Monolith series, honestly, I wasn't really excited about it, because I'm thinking I'm trying to equate hi-fi and budget-friendly cables, and those didn't jive. And so it wasn't until several other content creators and people that know how to measure and have capable measuring equipment got some of your equipment in, and they're like, these are actually legit. Like, this is the real deal. And the amplifiers are made by, they're, I guess, designed by ATI, which is well known in the industry. The subwoofers are being designed by well-known designers. And so it was like, okay, well, let me check this out. And then I reached out to you, and you sent me one of your subs, and then the whole system, and the dual 15s. I'm like, okay, there's definitely some greatness here that's happening. And really, you have carved a space for Monoprice and created Monolith. And I think the community is better off for that. So we definitely appreciate that. So appreciate the comment, Tristan.
I mean, that means a lot. I really appreciate it. Thanks for keeping up with the Joneses. Like I said, I really appreciate it. I tried to do my best.
Yeah.
But I think we have some really great product for the money. Like I said, I think a lot of it's a good time to be into audio. There's a lot of good choices
for sure
right now. But Monoprice, I mean, we're an interesting company because we have the flexibility and the ability to try all sorts of things.
Yeah.
High-end audio being one, 3D printers, like you said, monitors. Like outdoor stuff, like guitar, I'm not that I know anything about guitars, but everybody says our guitars are awesome for the money too. And the guy that manages the pro audio gear is a musician in a band. Used to tour way back when, and so he knows like how a guitar should feel and sound. He's an enthusiast himself in that area, and that's kind of how it is. It's like, whereas I'm not. The cable person doesn't necessarily know much about audio, but like the networking person doesn't know much about audio, but I don't know much about networking. So or like guitars or what makes a guitar great. But it creates a unique set of challenges, and Monoprice is not we are an imperfect company, I would say, and we should try to do a better job articulating we have all this different stuff and why. But because we are primarily obviously known for cables, and cables remains a big bulk of our business.
Well, good. I mean, and I hope it continues, because I still buy my cables from you. Because
trust me.
And I've just always been of the mindset copper is copper. I don't need $1,000 piece of copper. I need a piece of copper. So but that's my take on it.
I think it's funny because I remember the days when every retailer was assorting like Monster Cable, Terra Labs, Audio Quest, or Have At You. And, I think by now everybody understands copper is copper. That seemed like it was an uphill battle in the early 2000s to kind of get people to understand, like, it was truthfully, I think it was going digital that kind of made everybody get like, wait a minute, my picture looks the exact same with this $10 HDMI cable versus the one for $100.
Yeah.
I don't get it, because everybody understood you're going to get the ones and zeros or you're not.
Yeah. Yeah. And digital for sure.
They still peddle that stuff at Expona. I mean, you go to Expona, they got $1,000 a foot cable there. And there's people walking up to that stand and taking brochures and everything else. It's wild.
Yeah, I went to the Audio Expo, $70,000 pair of cables.
Well, look though, that's for an audience that's got $150,000 pair of speakers, right? But yeah, I remember I walked into the Audio Quest booth at I think the show, the one that's in Newport. This is like 4 or 5 years ago. And he was like, "Oh, hi, nice to meet you." They looked down at my badge and saw I was a Monoprice and was like, literally like threw up a little bit in his mouth and sharted and then walked away from me.
Oh, goodness.
My favorite story of that is when we went to Expona a couple years in some of their real expensive rooms where the speakers are coming up on $1 million.
Yeah.
They'll have the speaker cables up on trestles, right? And the power cables up on trestles. Sure. And they'll have this, I mean, the gauge on that wire is like that thick, and it plugs into the outlet at the hotel,
right.
that has the 12 gauge Romex in the wall.
Well, I used to, I mean, this is even before I was, doing this for a living, but if you go to, I mean, I used to always joke of you're putting these massive interconnects in between your components that cost a lot, but it's are they wiring the internals with the same stuff?
No.
No, I mean, so does it, I mean, and now if you go to, working with a lot of engineers and you go to their place of work or you visit other companies that do product and they're all it's all really basic cables that even the engineers are using, a lot of them are using Monoprice cables too, but yeah, I kind of trust a lot of the engineers because they tend to know things.
Yeah.
They're most engineers are difficult to work with because they know more than me, and that just upsets me greatly. But they're paid to separate the garbage from reality, so if you get the right, like Dan, Dan's that way. That's why his products are so good. But most every engineer I've worked with, I haven't really worked with an engineer that would be like, you need to get the $300 RCA cable or ain't worth anything. I've never had any of them tell me that. Yeah.
Sure. Well, Chana, here's not really a question, but Chana says, Monolith THX satellite speakers are integral in me making Dolby Atmos content. You need Atmos speakers. Make sure you check out Monolith. So just another plug for you guys. So if you're not familiar with Monoprice, Monolith, man, definitely hit them up. Great bang for
those little, and by the way, and I appreciate the comment, John. Those little satellite speakers are cool as hell. I actually, I mean, they're pretty flat, like the 200 or not two, like 100 hertz.
Mm-hmm.
So they integrate with any sub really well. As a little 5.1 system, if you got space constraints, it blows, it'll blow away like a Bose system for a satellite system. But I also think they're super cool. Put them on little stands and use them as as a desktop monitor.
Sure.
With a sub, like a tiny sub, you got a really kick-ass PC system or office system. I use them at my office a lot. I just have them hooked up there.
Definitely multiple uses for that. So this comes from 314 Carpenter. I believe he was the one that recommended a couple of weeks ago. He's like, hey, if we could get Hobie on here, I would love it, because there's actually several questions he's got. He says, feeling a bit of a matchmaker, super stoked that Hobie offering up his time here. Glad that we're able to get you on here, and appreciate Jonathan as well. So again, I think I've got some questions that he's got starred later on down here. So Rod says, does Monolith plan to take on upmarket brand like Power Sound Audio? So again, kind of talking about the bigger, kind of the massive subwoofers, really high output. And your subwoofers have high output, but I think maybe they're talking about 18s, 21, big. And we kind of addressed that earlier. So not really major plans to go that direction. Is that correct?
Yeah, not currently.
Okay. Super cool. I'm going to keep going through because you guys got a bunch of them. Crazy Like a Genius. Monoprice owes most of their business to Hobie. Hobie's too humble to say it himself.
I need to hire that dude as my personal PR guy. He could be my hype man.
He is, dude. Tristan's a great dude. Modulus, excuse me. High Modulus says, please explain why the 8-channel Class D offering needs 40 amps. Channel peaks seem not to justify that much raw power needed.
Yeah, I mean, I think he's right. You're not going to ever draw 40 amps. We did a two. Basically, why he's asking that is we have 2 power cords on our Class D amplifier. Morris Kessler, and I'm not going to ever argue with Morris Kessler, felt that was the best way to ensure you're going to get proper power draw on all the across the modules to get the maximum power out of that. Like I said, you're never going to need 40 amps at the same time, but that was his design influence on that piece. And speaking of that amplifier, so it was discovered on ASR. So we did all of our testing and measuring of those amplifiers in balanced mode when we were putting those together. And again, it's I mean, they're the Hypex modules we use. We didn't mess with the design. The only thing we really but we didn't do anything to Hypex's design other than adding a pretty robust heat sink to it. But it turns out if you either leave the input unplugged or you utilize XLR and RCA adapter, you do hear noise in the even channel. Even though it's pretty low, you do hear some noise in the even channels of that of the amplifier. Again, if you're using XLR connections, balanced connections, it's not an issue. You don't hear anything, which is why I think most people buying these are using these in balanced mode. But we did complete, and we're going to be sending out to people that want to do it themselves. It's just a little metal. I can even send pictures after this chat. It's just a little metal thing you put under the screw of each module, a little metal shield, which will shield. It's actually Hypex design issues that they're going to need to address in the module, where they put the power supply too close to the output, which generated noise in there on that side of the channel. So this is a little shield. You just half unscrew the one screw, slide this under, screw it down, fixes it.
Nice.
I think anybody can do it at home as long as they do it not plugged in.
Yeah.
But most people buying this type of product, I think, will be comfortable doing that. If we need to retrofit everything we have in stock, which I know we're going to do over the next 4 weeks, trying to schedule it out currently, but we finally solved it.
Fantastic, man. So Ike says, Hobie, I need a Monolith plaque or decal for my home theater. You got any of those?
If you don't, I never.
I think you're gonna have to look at eBay. Usually people do that.
You can find people to make stuff.
The sad thing is they borrow your logo and then they make money selling a plaque with your logo on it. So it is what it is, but it still gives you exposure. So I guess it's a good deal either way.
No, that's cool. I am honored he even wants to put Monolith on a plaque.
That's awesome. Ike's a good dude. I had a chance to film his home theater when we went to Cedia, and then he hung out with me and Brad, home theater gamer. So we had a great time with him. So appreciate you, Ike. Let's see. Kurum says, I was going to make a request for a product, but now I'm more concerned about your well-being. Best wishes, man.
No, I appreciate requests. Like I said, I don't think I'm going to kick the bucket anytime soon. At least I hope not. I have a mortgage to pay.
Sure.
But yeah, no, I love product requests.
Cool. Yeah, so definitely
send them
ask
over
it in the chat if you're still hanging around. We'll see if we can get it answered. So SRW1000, could we ever see more assignable IO remote codes added to the HTP1? There are 8 now, but we could always use more.
That is a good question. It hasn't been, well, it really hasn't been much of a focus of the things we've been discussing internally.
Yeah.
But it's I will make a
possible,
note.
But not on the.
It's not on top of the list, but I can understand why it would be.
Good suggestion there. He's got another one. Is it possible for the DSU to be upgraded like the Denon Marantz units were to allow the up mixer to use wides. The wide synth feature works, but not as well as the official Dolby version.
That's, I was going to say, the wides already work as far, you know what I mean? We kind of broke the rule out of the gate on the HTP1, because if you actually follow Dolby DTS, you're not supposed to sync the wides when you decode. But we did to get everything to the speakers. I'll have to follow up with that internally too. I mean, it would be possible from the firmware upgrade. I don't see why it would be an issue to change if we had enough people that wanted to.
Nice. So what about Direct Live? So I'd like
I can't talk about things that aren't announced.
Okay. All right. We'll move on.
By other part. I think I believe there'll be an announcement from Derek at CES. I believe they haven't told me they are, but I think they have something coming out that I think is pretty damn cool.
Nice. All right. So it might be something in the works. So Beta Mega says, what is the product management process for creating new and updated products?
What do you exactly mean by that? I mean,
do you just like wake up one night and like in the middle of the night go, man, I got an idea, and that's your process? Or
that's part of it. Yeah.
Because you're the guy. You're the one that
right.
dreams up the product. You're the one that decides, figures out based on forums, like you said, that you're a part of. You see the feedback coming in. And so based on that and your desire as a consumer yourself and as a home theater enthusiast and a music enthusiast, you come up with these products. So is there really a process, or is it just?
Oh yeah, there's a process. You know, some of it is just looking at what the competition's doing and figuring out if we can be disruptive in that space, or if we have a chance in that space, or if that product's already doing it well enough that there's no room for us. Some of it to me wasn't very hard. I mean, obviously, like if you want to get into like the high-end audio space, you're going to need speakers and you're going to need amplifiers, you're going to need subwoofers, right? So that's not, to me, wasn't a lot of hard work, but some of it is trying to determine, well, what kind of speakers, what kind of price points you want to put them at, where should the performance be, what should they look like, like on the Audition, the Encore speakers that came out recently, it was a lot of, kind of bracketing, and for me, internally bracketing them up against current brands and where I'm trying to go after, what that customer looks like, what prices I need to hit, what costs I'm going to need from there, where am I going to have to give up something to gain something over here. I think that's been my experience working with some of the factories that build product, and obviously we work with the same factories that build products for Klipsch and Polk, and I mean it's not an enormous pool of factories, right? So we're all kind of working with the same people, but a lot of the feedback that I've gotten from some of these people is I'm one of the few product managers that keeps asking them to make it more expensive. So instead of grinding them on price and going, okay, how can I get this for cheaper? I'm like, well, how much better can I make it? If you like, for instance, you're telling me this tweeter is $15.
Right. Sure.
Right.
So what if we?
So how much better is the performance going to be if I spend $20 on it?
Right. Yeah.
And
can we get 20% improvement in the performance of that?
Right. And they're kind of like, well, what do you mean? I'm like, well, like how much better can it get? Because honestly, with the cool thing about Monoprice, since we're direct to consumer, is that we have a lot of things we can play with. And so like a 5, 10, even sometimes even a $50 wholesale delta doesn't change the MSRPs very much.
Yeah.
But it could make the product a hell of a lot better. So a lot of it is playing with that and then doing round and round and round of testing, making sure the performance is there, seeing where we can push it. And that's where, like working with Dan, that was a lot of it, was, kind of come back with a baseline and having a whole bunch of conversations and how it's got to get better, or like, that's great in this area, we got to improve it over here. And it's like, and then, then things will come up. It's like, yeah, we can do that. But then like the cabinet's got to get 6 inches bigger. Is that going to be okay? I mean, it's sort of all that type of thing. But then you determine pricing. Then of course there's internal approval processes. And that's what I mean when you said, what's the process? It's sort
Right.
of
There's quite a bit that's involved. It's kind of a multifaceted question there.
Yeah. And that's the thing, like some projects you work on for 3 years and some of them are 6 months, and you kind of have a lot of things going on at once in various stages of development.
Right. So here's a more straightforward question. How about a 3-way center speaker?
We have one. It's coming back into stock, I think, in February. It's the THX 365C.
Super cool.
I am thinking of doing a bigger one.
Okay.
So that center everybody seems to really like. I mean, I do too. It sounds great. I tried to, I wanted to do the Encore and the Audition centers 3-way as well, but try to hit the price points I wanted to hit. It just wasn't very feasible. I think a 3-way center is a lot better. You don't get the off-axis lobing that you're going to get. Just 2-way. But then for some room, the 2-way. But I'm thinking of taking the existing 365C and doing basically a 465C and adding 2 more 6.5-inch drivers.
Right. Nice.
So this is the Siphonics audio with the take the upfires off the bookshelves. Okay. So this is basically a feature you're getting for free. If I take them off, the speakers don't get cheaper.
Doesn't change the price.
No. So, but like I'm willing to put out a set without it, just to satisfy everybody. But I think the price will ultimately end up being the same. And it's funny because it's one of the things that I thought would be cool to have it. Granted, upfiring speakers is definitely not the best way to have an Atmos experience. But if it's, I'm even hesitant to, put like an in-ceiling speaker in my ceiling just because, one, if I do it myself, the odds of me putting multiple holes in my ceiling is pretty high. But as I'm looking up at my ceiling, yeah, I felt like it was going to be a free feature, but it almost seemed to hurt the opinion of the speaker and some of the enthusiast eyes. And so it'd be obviously very easy for us to strip that out and put it out without the upfiring. And that might be something that happens in the back half of this year.
Gotcha. Super cool. Appreciate the question.
Well, and the community feedback is why the tower speakers of that series don't have it. I was able to, since the other ones came out first, and that was a lot of the feedback, don't put upfiring speakers. I was like in the middle of development. I'm like, let's do a version without the upfiring speakers. So that's why we were able to have a set without that on the towers.
Super cool. All right, let's pull up another couple of them here. We got 314 Carpenter says, can you explain the new hardware mod fix XLR to RCA, the M8125X and the M8250 amplifiers we'll be getting now? Are Purify amp modules coming? What new amps are headed to production? So a lot of questions regarding the amps. So share with us what you can, and if you can't, then
I'm not working on Purify module Class D amps. I'll say somebody shared an interesting story about Purify and HyperX and how it may be I shouldn't share it on but I'll just say they may measure better, but sonically even the designer knows you can't hear it.
Okay. And I've said that for years. Not everything that can be measured can be heard.
A lot that can be measured can't be heard.
And that's okay that it measures better, but I've always been the guy that I'm looking at it. Doesn't matter. I mean, sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. So
yeah, I think
in your opinion, I mean, it's like, okay, I'm not going to work on something that I don't feel that really adds value that you're going to be able to hear,
Yeah, I mean, now like the argument is, and I've had this argument with some audio designers too. Like, and some of it's around like, cyanide and distortion measurements and things like that, right? But like you can't argue something measuring higher sounds worse, right? I mean, that's a hard argument. That's like, you compare cars, and this car goes 150 miles an hour and this one goes 120. You could never argue the 150 one's going to be slower than the other one or something like that.
Right.
But in the real world, like you probably couldn't tell a difference. Like I'll say when you see measurements on receivers and processors where people, I would say some enthusiasts feel like they should measure better than they do overall, because some of them measure like with the signal to noise ratio of 85 or minus 85, minus 104, minus 102, minus 97, up some of them are in the 70s. You probably couldn't really hear a difference between any of them. Even though my processor measures, like minus 102 or something like that. But the noise in your room
right.
is going to, you know what I mean? Like if you have a clean room, you probably had 60 dB is from the room. So sometimes we can get caught up. I mean, I do it myself, right?
Sure.
Like I said, you pull up, like spreadsheets with subwoofer outputs, and you start like looking at half a dB as a big difference in performance when it's really not.
Right.
But
Sure.
not to say we shouldn't have products that measure amazingly.
Right. Sure.
And there have been some products that people say sound great that don't measure that great. But then if you like it, what's the harm in it? You know what I mean? But that's why, I mean, we do measure everything before it comes out. I mean, I know what the performance is before it comes out.
Right.
I don't think I answered his question. So I think I just started rambling.
It's all good.
On the amplifiers, we have the parts to fix them. There's some things I was actually at ATI this past Friday. There's some things we need to figure out from a logistics standpoint on how to manage this. Like I said, if you're already using it balanced, there really isn't an issue. I mean, that needs to be fixed. There's nothing that's going to change for you. It's only if you use an XLR to RCA. I think it's because it's because the third pin stays hot. Like if you don't have the third pin stay hot in your adapter, you shouldn't. I think it's care if the 2-pin or 3-pin now. God damn it. Pardon my French. But if the adapter doesn't take that into account, then you might even be okay there. But it is just basically how you'll have to take the case off of the amp, and then you'll do a half turn on one screw and put a little metal shield there and screw it down, and then the noise is gone. But we got to retrofit what's in stock, and then take care of the customers too.
Sure.
Well, but I think we had to pause on that, what you were talking about, the SYNAD scores, because I think that's really good information, and it's not well known in our community. You see those guys wrestling around on the forums talking about, hey, this one's got a SYNAD score of 102, and that one's only 87. Don't buy the 87; it's junk. You're confirming your opinion on that, your knowledge on that. Gene from Audioholic said that most humans can't hear above 70 SYNAD score, and so we've got this bench racing going on that's happening at these upper specs, and people are disparaging products when it's all beyond audible. There's nothing wrong with over engineering, but we should recognize that such as in the community and let it be known, that this is inaudible. And I think we've gone from this subjective hobby, like 10 or 15 years ago, where you wax poetic on these speakers and you kind of just made it out of your rear end, to now this bench racing where it's these objective scientific measurements that are beyond what we can even hear, and it's right. Like the pendulum swung the other direction too far. So we as a community need to make that more well known and be more transparent about that. So I appreciate you saying that in this call.
Yeah, I'm sure I'll be the poster child
of what not to say
tomorrow. But,
they're good, man. But the thing is, people appreciate you're just real. You know what I'm saying? I mean, you're not trying to sugarcoat it. You do have an opinion, and there's nothing wrong with having an opinion. And
so, I mean, I've gotten into very heated arguments about this. So I will say people that I've gotten into engineers that think a lot of this is rubbish. But there's also a point of selling it, right? I mean, there's even some engineers that think the signal noise ratio is like the least important part of the overall performance, right? But that's what we're kind of all over indexing on right now, is what that number is, right? And I'm not saying I don't know which is right, but this is just the conversations I've had over the past 5 years with several different people.
Yeah.
And it just sort of tells you about how like this engineer approaches things.
Yeah.
Like I could tell you, like, you know, one engineer I work really closely with is he's all more about musicality, like of his piece, than the ultimate performance. So like even when he designs it, it's not like his numbers are bad.
Right.
They're just not, you know, the state of the art minus 120, you know, on a DAC or something like that. But like, you know, he feels like we've, you know, there are some people that will listen to something that measures that well and listens to his stuff, thinks his stuff will sound better. Like it's just the music sounds better. Now, that's the subjective part of this hobby. Now, you know, what I think, like, I think it's fine having, I mean, obviously as a manufacturer, I'm better off having something measure as well as it can be, than try to say like, oh, this measures in the low 80s and this, you know, and like, cause I think you're kind of starting at a lower, you're trying to ski uphill a little bit at that point, especially to where the community is right now. But like, you know, when we talk about, and this is where like I'm much more comfortable with like the home theater, because that's where my whole passion's been my whole life.
Sure.
The headphone amp thing, like I think is a little bit different. I mean, like to me, like you have people spending $500 on a headphone amp to generate 1 watt. Like that's crazy. Like your phone can generate a watt. I mean, you know what I mean? Like where you can get a home theater that does 200 watts for $1,000, you know? But I mean, this is where like when I see in a lot of these conversations, it's just like, are you guys having any fun? Right? Isn't this supposed to be a fun hobby?
Yeah.
But again, I'm going to get complete garbage for this, but yeah, we need to start having a conversation what's actually audible. And it's not like, but you can't create the straw man argument that you don't care about performance because you say that. But like, because after a certain threshold, you're arguing over stuff that no one can hear, which is why no one can hear your argument anymore. Yes, you can get things to measure a certain way. But like, you know, don't pick like I was saying about the sub, but don't pick a sub processor over a 5 dB difference in signal and noise ratio. Yeah. Like, you know, when you're dropping in a piece of gear that expensive, like that shouldn't be your only criteria.
Sure.
Like don't go on the graph and go that one because it measured the best right there. You know, it may, the user interface may stink or something, you know what I mean? Or something. There may be several other reasons, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, I just feel like the numbers are all fine so long as it's transparent to the people who are reading this thing that aren't EEs, that aren't, you know, the Gene DeSalas or the ASR Amir technical level of expertise. They need to pass that information on to their readers because the readers aren't grasping that right now. That's the other side of the coin.
Well, that's why, like, I know you've had, you know, Aaron.
Yes,
right, Michael. Yeah, I mean, I think Aaron does a great job. He does a great job mixing all the scientific measurements and then really contextualize them in his written reviews and his videos. You know, I really like what he's done with his channel, what he does on his site, writing, and I've become pretty good friends with him. You know, I think he takes the right time. I mean, I also think ASR does too, for the most part. It's not like I think, you know, but I do think sometimes there needs to be some contextualization between what's really audible and what's not really audible.
For sure, man. Ohm has a question in regards to home theater. You said you're passionate about home theater. So what about your in-wall products? Is it possible to get recommendations for an enclosure backer box for those products?
So those are all designed open baffle. You know, I've even talked to Dan directly on those, and even he says he doesn't feel like the performance would be improved by putting a back on it.
Okay.
So
it needs to kind of be designed.
We've gotten that question. I've gotten that question. I mean, that was a question.
Sure.
So I wanted to I wanted to put an option to be able to sell the back.
Mhm.
And Dan was like, no, I'm not designing it with to put a back box on there. I want to have it here, like the
So this was designed specifically not to have a back box. And if
right. Just to
now
be
I
open
know, of
baffle.
course, now he designed some with back boxes.
Yep.
But they were designed for that application.
Yep.
Not as an afterthought. Okay. Makes
Correct.
sense.
From the forums in that same vein is a continuation of that question. Do you have any intent to have angled speakers for your in-wall?
Yeah, they're coming. So they may be, they kind of got hung up in development a little bit. We've gone a couple of rounds with THX because these will be THX certified too. They're in development. They're coming. They've just taken a little bit longer than any of us anticipated.
Mhm.
I'm hoping they'll be out sometime in the summer, but they're on their way.
Cool. Good question. Yeah. Raj even asked that one. Appreciate that, Jonathan. And Jonathan, I know I'd mentioned to you before, any point, dude, if you've got to run, we've got probably about another 10. I'm not taking any more questions. We're going to go through these. Probably have about 9 more left. So if you need to bail at any time, you just give the wave and you're out.
Yeah, I'm good. Thanks, man.
All right, cool, man. So let's see. What about in ceiling speakers? Some folks, they want to be able to install these in ceiling. Any plans for some THX?
That's what I was just talking about, was in ceiling. I didn't see, I thought the question previously was about in ceiling on an angled in wall. So an angled in wall, there's nothing in the works.
Okay.
Angled in ceilings,
okay.
They're coming.
Okay. Glad we clarified that. So
Yeah,
yes,
sorry about that.
Ceilings, not for angled in walls. Mark has a question here. Does Monolith subs have a repair depot in Canada, or do they have to be shipped back to the US at the customer's cost?
Shouldn't be at the customer's cost. So I finally, I hope nobody at Monoprice watches this, but
I won't tell
I think
them.
I think I finally won a pretty big internal battle. We're going to be getting a lot of parts coming to our warehouse. Amplifiers, drivers, grills, for all the Monolith stuff. It's not the usual way Monoprice does business. It's kind of one of the ways where I've said we're an imperfect company. We did have parts
to make it better.
Yes, we did have parts we did have amplifiers for the other subs. It's just, it gets lost in translation to the customer service team, and that's something we need to address. But we did have it to where you didn't need to send your subwoofer back. Honestly, I don't think we've had a failed driver. If anything fails, it's usually the amplifier.
Sure.
Even though we burn them in for like 48 hours straight at the high. I mean, like we do everything we can to make sure they aren't defective, but so we will be bringing in all the parts to where you wouldn't have to ship them back. This isn't usually, there'll be some growing pains of that, because this isn't how we usually do business. It's just always been, hey, if it's broken, send it back. We'll send you a new one. And I've been trying to advocate we'll actually have a better customer experience and save money if we just send out a part, because it's just 2 little clips you got to hook up to that. It's like a really simple in the field. Any customer that's buying this sub, I think, can do it. I don't think anybody. Well, there may be some of the questions I get. There are definitely people buying these things that have no idea how to. Not questions tonight. Not tonight.
Not our audience
in general.
Dudes out there.
But yeah,
that's awesome.
We'll also be getting like speaker components, and so like if your tweeter goes out, we can send you a tweeter. It'll be a work in progress. It probably won't be perfect for at least 6 months, but we're getting there. We're getting there.
Tristan says you make too much sense to be an executive.
Is that why I don't get promoted? I wondered why I don't get promoted. I always thought it was just I'm not charming or something.
That's hilarious, man. He always brings the comedy relief. Dan Black says, "Hey Hobie, I have the 7x200 amp, and I'm gonna throw a plug. The 11X, I still have. That thing is rocking, man. Has not had a hiccup. So I'm glad you got the 7x200. That's awesome. Would I see any fidelity improvement going with the new Class D amplifier instead?"
No. Thanks for the to me, the Class D, I wasn't a big fan for a long time. They've come a long way, especially the past like 5 years, I think. But I remember having Class D amps and a Pioneer receiver. And I remember feeling it sounded pretty dry, and some of the initial B&O ice amps I felt sounded pretty lean and dry. But like I said, they've come a long way, but I don't think it would sound better. I still would primarily buy Class D if you wanted a smaller amp, or if you have issues with heat, like being able to disperse heat.
Sure.
Then that's kind of a better amp for you.
But sonically, we're not really going to hear anything.
I don't know. Look, and this is the same. This is the thing with most amps you're going to buy from most reputable people are all going to mostly sound the exact same, used within the tolerances of their power, right?
Yeah,
the only time you can hear differences is when you start to stress an amp.
Yep.
They will freak out in different ways, and that you will hear some sonic differences. But this is, I talk to my friends who are definitely not an audio enthusiast, they don't understand that most of the time when they're using 3 watts of power.
Yeah.
For the most part, you might get to 10, that's, watching Netflix or something like that. But
yeah.
But yeah, I don't think you'll hear an audible difference.
Yeah. And I appreciate you sharing that. K-Man said he loves his 7X. 11 channel wasn't around when he purchased it. So you need an upgrade program is what he's saying.
Yeah, that might be.
Oh, look at there. Hey, you never know. So appreciate the question there. So SRW 1000, some HTP ones have been upgraded to the AMP 253 firmware, fixing issues with Oro multi-channel upscaling for 9.1.4 or more systems. Can this be incorporated into any Monolith upcoming firmware upgrade?
Anything's possible. We should probably talk offline about that.
All right. So
I know there's been some
best way to read what if he wants to email you a question, like email you.
Yeah, he can email me. There's been some very incredible work done on the HTP one by some folks on AVS. That's just it's amazing what the enthusiast community can do.
Yeah, for sure.
It's amazing.
Okay. All righty. So hit Hobie up on the forums or email. Tim Perry has a thought here. Let me move this out of the way. I really like my 7 365Ts Monolith speakers. Need 5 256Bs to complete an Oro 3D setup. Any chance of a 265 without upfiring? So I guess, is that part of what answered the question earlier? Okay.
Yeah, it'd be possible.
Okay.
If we do it, then we probably will. It wouldn't be until back half of this year where they come into stock.
Okay. Cool. So here's a request. Kerman says, the request is a tiny 7.2 AVR with just 2 or 3 HDMI inputs for connecting to a setup like your new satellite speakers. No analog inputs to the receiver, just some bare bones minimum stuff that you need.
That would be, that kind of does make sense, sort of something.
Would that be super niche though, you think?
Yes.
And I think
that's always the, I really appreciate the question. It gets expensive. Like anytime you start putting HDMI and stuff, it starts getting expensive. And then 7 amps, and then, I'll say, it does feel very niche. Like you said, it may be a product people think they want, and then they don't buy much. But I have friends at Yamaha and Akio, and they have told me, in their market research, what's interesting is nobody will buy their receiver, a processor, unless it has every streaming service known to man, every codec known to man on the box, right?
Which all the bells and whistles, all the logos.
Right. But in the post market research they do, like 2% of the people
nobody uses it.
Right.
You knew where that was going.
It's true.
Like for a long time, even everybody that I have to have Atmos in my system. I have to have Atmos. Like only 6% of the people that are buying this stuff are using an Atmos system.
Yeah.
It's like I only run. I'm not going to say what I run, but my room only supports 7.1.
Mm-hmm.
Now it could support obviously doing. I think I'm actually going to use my satellites, although I got to run this by the spouse. That ain't gonna work.
Got to get some approval.
Well, we go back and forth. I need to finally. My dream. I need to work with you. I need to build a home theater room, which has been what I've been wanting to do since 17. I think now's a pretty good time to do it.
Yeah. Cool. Last three, two of them is a question, one of them is a comment, and we'll wrap it up, guys. So, any plans for a THX? Okay, we already hit this one too, right?
They'll be using the exact same drivers, so it'll be a timbre match. Yeah.
Sometimes I star them way beyond and then forget to read it before I say it out loud. So we got two more here. So am I wasting my effort to go with one sub? And if I do one, am I better off with the 16 or the 13? I don't think it's ever a waste to go with one sub. I like dual subs. I think you guys would agree. If you can go with dual subs, adds a lot of flexibility. You get better seat to seat when it's dialed in. You get a little bit more output. So I don't think it's ever a waste. And I think every situation is different. Do you have the space for two subs? I'm a big fan. Go as big as you can.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, Jonathan's got 8 18s in his room, and they're phenomenal. I've got 4 18s in my room. Absolutely love it. So if you can go big, definitely go with the 16. I don't know. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, no, I agree with that. If you can only get one sub, go with the biggest and most powerful. You can't. It's kind of like TVs, right? You know, everybody regrets not getting the bigger TV, right? So, like, if you're like, you know, on an OLED, like, should I get the 83 inch or the 77? Get the 83 inch.
Yeah.
Stretch, right? And same with this on the sub. Should I get the 13 or the 16? I would get the 16 because if you get the 13, you're going to wonder the rest of your life if you should have got the 16.
And you know what if I would have got that? I'm serious. I've done it. You know, so it kind of solves that. You don't have the itch anymore because you got the best that you offer.
Well, because then you end up spending more money.
Yep.
Because you'll buy the 13 and then you're going to figure out some way to sell this on the side and buy the 16.
And you're going to lose money usually.
Usually, yeah.
And time and energy. I mean, there's a lot of reasons. So I'm for it, man. Get the 16. It's a beast, man. I reviewed the 13 and I thought it was phenomenal. I mean, really, really, really solid. And I'm not. All right. So I'm gonna state something that, because you've been very forthright with your opinions and might get in trouble, but I'm just gonna throw this one out there. Why do you have a 13 and a 16? And I don't know if I've measured yours, but I've measured other people's subwoofers and they claim a certain number, and they don't measure that way. Even at we're talking end to end, it's not that measurement. Is that a marketing?
So, yeah. So the whole reason, the whole reason I have a 13 and a 16 is I want to go head to head with SVS.
Right.
And if you look at the measurements of our 13 and 16 head to head with SVS by price point, you'll save $500 to $600 and have more performance if you buy a Monolith subwoofer.
But as far as size wise, though, I guess that's my question. Does it measure 13 inches and does it measure 16? Because I've measured them and I love the SVS guys. And I've told them, I'm like, dude, I even put a tape measure and at the farthest end, I mean, maybe if you take the rim off and you've got a bare bone driver, maybe there's some fabric under there or some whatever. So that's where I was like, man, I mean, I would just rather them. And, you know, I'd rather it's a 12 inch. It's a 15. I mean, nobody makes a 13 or a 16. So I'm just curious. Have you measured them? Do they measure 13 and 16?
Yeah, I actually think well, I mean, I maybe not completely, you know, but I actually think our 13 measures like 13.9 and it's actually a 15. It's actually in a 15-inch basket. But anyway, I'm
cool with that. If it measured over, theirs did not measure.
I think and I'm gonna have to go check my homework.
I think the PB, and like I said, I love the guys. I love their PB16. It's a phenomenal subwoofer.
I can see the headline: Monolith lies about subwoofer size.
But it does not measure. It's like 15 and a quarter or 15 and a half at most. I mean, you have to round up to get to 16. So that's why I brought it up. It's more of a fun kind of poke than anything, but I just find that interesting. So, but I'm glad that you're trying to compete with them, because they've definitely been, doing a great job in performance and, their design, but you're trying to bring something in that can save somebody some money and actually provide even more.
They're the best.
Yeah.
I mean, it's kind of like if you were putting on a car, like a luxury car. I mean, how could you say you don't want to be better than Mercedes or BMW? It's like going, well, we're going to put out a luxury car and just kind of be meh. Like, to me, like, SVS is the standard bearer. My first two like real subs I bought were SVS subs back in like 97, like the 2539s, I think, the cylinders. I had two of them. Just blew my mind how good they sounded for the money. Because at that time, like if you go get like your average subwoofer, like I said, any of these subwoofers from the brands I mentioned before are all going to pretty much smoke any sub you can get from like, even the Magnolia stuff in Best Buy, especially for the money. It just destroys them.
Sure. Last thought here. Let me go here. All right. So actually they're two and they're really just comments. So just an appreciation to you, Hobie. So thanks for your time here tonight, Hobie. Hope to see you posting on the AVS forum again soon from SRW 1000. And 314 Carpenter says, thank you, Hobie, for setting the record straight on this channel tonight. You've been absolutely fantastic. Anything you need, we're always here for you, brother. So definitely a lot of love for you, a lot of love for Monolith and what you stand for. We love what you brought to the space and the home theater community. Like I said, I've reviewed plenty of products from you. I think Brad, Home Theater Gamer, he's got some. Who are some other guys that have your products, maybe even currently, that they can kind of be looking at their channels for some new reviews?
Joe and Tone, he's got a couple things in. I know he has the Audition series and the new
Shauna has the small satellites, and his
Shauna has those. And then Joe's got the like I said, he's got the Audition series speakers and the new desktop speakers, the MTM 100s, which are amazing. They're kind of big for a desktop speakers. I mean, all the Monolith stuff's kind of big, but man, they kick ass. Like they measure flat. They're great.
Sure. Symphonics Auto's got a couple of them. He's got the B6 THX C6. He's got the T6 towers. So definitely check out these guys' channel. There's definitely some content coming your way, I'm sure, on their channels. So hope this has been fun. Jonathan?
Yeah, no, thanks for having me.
Can I ask a question that I've had on my mind?
Do it, man.
So I really enjoy Monopross products. I have a lot of the cables and so forth in my home theater and have for 20 years. Your HTTP one was something disruptive to the market. So I thought it was interesting when you said, hey, is the space already filled, or can we make something disruptive? So the guy who said I would like 2 to 3 HDMI inputs and just a bare bones receiver, it's going to be hard to be disruptive in a market where you can go to Costco and buy a $500 receiver that does basically that. So it's probably not a good idea. But HTTP1 was kind of like, I remember everyone was clamoring for, 15, 16 channels for years. And the only option was Trenoff, which was
way up there,
the price of a car.
Yeah.
You guys came in and offered it for $4,000 and blew everyone's socks off. I mean, the forum was just a buzz. And then you've done cool stuff along the way, like introduced BEQ, the community base equalization thing. That's so awesome. How did you guys? I mean, I'm curious about your development team. I'm curious about like the internals of that. Is somebody on your team like designing this? Are you working with a third party? I mean, I know you probably can't reveal all that, but it's so cool that you've listened to the community and been there and made these types of functions. You really have done a lot for the AV community.
I appreciate you saying that. Like, I have. So sometimes I take feedback. I watch all the feedback, good and bad, right? And I try to address all the bad I can. And especially with the processor, it was really like getting just real-time feedback and things people wanted. And as we were talking about a little bit earlier, like some of it is way too niche. Like, for instance, we had a couple people, I think, on the processor that wanted to do, digital crossovers and things like that. Now, could the HTTP one do it? Probably, but like it'd take a lot of time, energy, and resources to help 12 guys, 12 guys that want to use the HTTP one for digital crossovers for their speakers. we would have had to make a lot of changes. But I did. I mean, I thought because a company like Monoprice, which doesn't have an absurd marketing budget, like where we can just throw ads up to where you see us all the time. Not to say our competitors do, but you know, we have to. I have to be. Smart. I mean, some do, but we are frugal, thrifty, cheap maybe. But
that's why you're able to offer products at
right. Well, that's one of the reasons. I still think we could spend a little bit more and still offer it. But anyway, that's just that's my internal argument. Anyway, but to me, listening to the community is actually a big part of trying to make the product better. I mean, there have been sometimes silent revisions to things to make them better that we did to they may measure better than they have initially. I'm always doing running changes to the products to improve them. Like, you know, for instance, although I'm going to say this, and now the satellites are going to stop selling because they're selling like crazy, the little ones. But like the sensitivity on them is a little low. That's been some of the feedback. Now it's low for a reason, to try to get the performance where we need it. There was a whole lot of conversations around that.
Right.
But I will try to, at some point, it probably won't be for a year and a half or so. There'll be a running change where the sensitivity will improve and be where it needs to be. But yeah, I read all the comments because I am the only guy kind of doing some of this stuff, and sometimes I'll miss things, or sometimes I think isn't important ends up being really important, and vice versa. Things that I just didn't think were important end up being important. Like having app control in the sub. Like I still don't think that's of real importance, although it seems to be a knock every time somebody reviews a sub. Wish you had app control.
Yeah.
So I'm working on an app for Monolith subwoofers that we can do a run and change. I don't think it'd be a new line of subwoofers. It'd be something new. But yeah, I mean, to me, the community is extremely important, and it's where I personally learned almost everything as a young lad in the dawn of the internet in the late 90s. I was on AVS forum all the time, learning how to calibrate television and things like that. So I do listen to the community, which is why, it's great when the community is not, like, shame on you, this measures poorly, and how dare you. It's like, I am watching this and we'll make it better.
That is.
But I work with several different. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, it's good. That's fun information. It's fun to hear. Because I mean, you beat the big companies there too, right? You beat Denon, Marantz, Yamaha, Onkyo, Pioneer. They still don't have something that's 16 channels even today.
And that's right. No,
I just think it's cool.
Yeah. One of the coolest things for me personally was I forgot what CES it was, but we had the prototype HTP1, like it was still kind of a computer, so to speak. But I was talking to somebody, and I look over and I see like 6 or 7 guys all huddled around it, and they all have like taking notes and talking to each other. And they were, I noticed they were all Japanese, speaking in Japanese to each other. But I walk over to them, they all had Denon on their badges. And it was the engineering team from Denon trying to figure out how we did it at that price point.
Nice.
Now, some of it, but some of the way we can do things like this is Monoprice doesn't live and die based on the performance of the HTP1.
Yeah.
Right. So we can get real fun with the price points sometimes.
Right. Sure.
But a company like Trinov or Storm Audio,
they don't have that luxury. Yeah.
Right. They, that's why they have to have. That's one of the reasons their price points are higher.
Yeah.
And it's also some of the reasons they have, a better support structure than we do.
Sure.
So there are definitely some benefits.
I remember when you were coming out with the HTP1 and you had reached out to me and you were going to send me one when it was ready. And I just told you up front, I said, Hobie, I said, if you can make this thing and send it out and be as bug free as possible. Yep. I said, the price point, the feature set you're offering, you're going to blow everybody in this market out of the water in what you're offering in a processor. and you did that. I had reviewed the Emotiva RMC1. Did not have that experience. It was quite buggy, and hopefully they've got all those bugs fixed now with firmware, but that's a headache for a consumer. When a consumer gets a product in and they're constantly going, okay, I'm doing this, and a third of the time I turn it on, I don't have audio, that's a pretty significant issue, and that was some of the issues that I ran into. And so when you sent me the HTP1, I mean, literally there were some, I mean, we're talking really, really small hiccups, but I don't even think they were really that. It was really, really solid, well built. I had a great time with that unit. Was definitely grateful that I had a chance to experience. And then on a lot of my tours in Kansas City, there's other guys in Wisconsin, Missouri, they were running HTP ones as well in their system. And it's a rock star, man. So
I appreciate it. It was a big focus for me and the engineering team, and we also had a pool of about 10 beta testers behind the scenes trying to put it all through its paces. And I knew too, right? I mean, because look, one of our main competitors is Emotiva in the space, right?
Sure.
And I knew the problems they were having with the processor were, very apparent on the forums. And I knew if ours came out and worked, we win.
Yeah. I told you that.
And so that was,
make it work,
man.
I
remember that conversation we had.
Yeah.
And it did. And that's why I wanted to take the next step and went the extra mile and tried to incorporate all this community feedback and like, oh, I wish it would support REW. Done. In fact, the challenges we had with some of the bugs that did pop up was that we couldn't replicate. I mean, like any challenge with some of these, like you can't replicate them. Like the boot loop issue is actually, we still can't really replicate it on our side, but
Right.
we think we figured out what it is.
Yeah.
It's just sort of like, last week I have a 83 A90J OLED from Sony, and like Arc just quit working.
Right.
Like I didn't do anything.
Sure.
Why? How come? So now I'm like, I'm trying to
How do you send that?
troubleshooting that now for freaking 2 weeks. I was opposed to like unplugging everything from the wall and starting over, which is the only next step I can do. But like that's something you just can't replicate. That was really when you can't replicate it. It's hard for the engineers to address it. But yeah, I mean, but all that community feedback that we put back into that is what would make it hard to do an HTTP 2.
Mm-hmm.
Like I don't want to do an HTTP 2 just to get HDMI 2.1. That's why like.
Sure.
It may always be the HTTP one until the processor inside there can support whatever comes out next.
Okay, so along that same question with HTTP 1 versus HTTP 2, you had mentioned it's probably not possible to switch to the new HDMI 2.1 boards because of a power difference that's required for a power supply.
With one of the boards we had access to, it would have not have been great with our power supply.
So is it off the table, or are you waiting until another board comes out that might use reduced power? Like I know I've read that question a lot. Like, hey, is this moddable? Am I ever going to be able to have HDMI 2.1 in my HTTP1, or is it a new unit? That's the question, I think.
No, we are still, when I say, on this, it's it's a group effort. Although I drove all the feature set. Trust me, at one point this was a much different process, but it's still possible. It'll end up being in there. The board, the HDMI in board that's in there now is module. Like the whole thing's kind of module, to be honest with you.
Nice.
To where you should swap a board. I mean, we are looking at things of doing, either 2 HDMI 2.1s or 4 HDMI 2.1s. We'll figure it out. And there are new HDMI 2.1 boards coming down the pipe too from other suppliers.
Mm-hmm.
For a while there, the choice wasn't that many different choices on boards, but that's kind of opening up a little bit. And also too, the boards we had access to were some of the same boards that were in like Denon that ended up not being so great. So, or even they were gigabit limited.
Mm-hmm.
So we didn't really want to put that in there either. Like I said, this has been the most complicated thing I've ever worked on. No wonder other companies have like entire teams dedicated to this.
And that's pretty remarkable statement, though. I mean, the fact that you don't have some of the resources that they have, yet you were able to build something and dream up something and produce something that performs very well, very stable. And it was an answer to what the consumers wanted. They wanted a high, channel count, has all the bells and whistles for the most part, and just works. And that's a great accomplishment, man.
No, I appreciate it. And like I said, all the credit goes to the engineering team, man. They were amazing and dedicated and enthusiastic about putting out. They were proud they were able to put out a piece like this. So
it's really cool. Hey, I think I can speak for Michael and I. We'll both be praying for your health issue, man.
Yeah, man, for real.
That's
I appreciate it.
This is the first time I'd heard of that. I was like, and we even saw many people in the chat. They were like, dude, heart goes out to you. We love you. We appreciate you. Praying for you. So absolutely, man.
Yeah, thanks for all the kind thoughts. I mean, the only thing I could say, it's kind of funny when people say like you're, war on cancer, you're fighting cancer, because it's kind of passive. Like I sit in a chair, get an IV once a month, and take a chemo pill every night.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, progress has been
the best, man.
Fantastic. Very limited side effects so far. I don't have like a third arm growing out of my back yet. All that could make life interesting if it did. But
you get more accomplished. I mean, that's all.
So no, I'm in a it took up a lot of headspace initially, but I'm in a much better. It's in a better place medically, or it actually wasn't. I mean, luckily it was all caught early, and it's just there won't be anything like there isn't a remission for me, but the treatment has worked. So I don't. It's like I don't. There isn't a clock on my life or anything like that I'm dealing with on a day-to-day basis. Like I said, I'll probably Dunkin' Donuts is going to kill me before this cancer does. And even if cancer kills me, it's really just a tie. Because if I die, it dies.
Yeah.
That's the way I try to look at it.
We are all given a certain amount of time. We don't know when that time is up. So the cool
That's
thing
right.
is,
You're not even guaranteed today. Is that what they say? So
you make the best of today. You love your family. You be the best human that possible that you can be, and serve others, love others, live out your faith. If you have faith, all those good things, man. So, but definitely wishing you the best. Hobie, you've been awesome, man. You've answered literally all.
Thanks for having me on.
And I appreciate you guys in the chat. You guys brought the questions. We asked you what you wanted to know. And so it's really awesome to get Hobie on here to answer those questions. And Jonathan, appreciate you sticking around. I know we're a little bit over what we normally do, but a lot of great stuff. So
nice meeting you, Jonathan. Thanks everybody in the comments for the questions and kind comments and the tough questions too.
Yeah.
So I appreciate having me on.
So if I don't see you before Christmas, over here in the States, we celebrate Christmas. So that will fall on a Sunday. So we will not have Sunday Night Live next Sunday, but we'll resume the following Sunday. So wishing you guys all the best. Love you. Appreciate you more than you'll ever know. Thank you so much for all the great comments and suggestions and questions. And Ike says, don't be a stranger. We'll definitely have Hobie on here again in the future. So guys, hope y'all have an incredible week, a great Christmas if you celebrate that. God bless, and we'll catch you in the next video.